This is the Extra Point Podcast from Arizona's Family.
Well, talking all things Valley Sports, the guy that we really enjoy talking to out and about covering Valley Sports, Dana Scott from the Arizona Republic, zooms in here to the podcast studio. And first of all, I guess let's just talk about, you've had a big life moment for you recently. What's it like being a dad?
Oh, appreciate it, man. I love being a dad. I don't know anything about life before being a dad, even though it's been 5 days. It just seems like this crossover and paradigm shift that there was BC, which is basically life before Cortland, which is my daughter's name. And then afterwards, I feel like I've become a man. And there's a great line in The Godfather that I live by that, you can never be, if you spend time with your family, if you don't spend time with your family, you can never be a real man.
Nah, preach on that for sure. What do your stats look like as far as diapers changed? What are we looking at as far as metrics there?
Oh, well, I changed my first diaper fluidly this morning, actually. I tried the other day, and I kind of kept it too low and loose. So I'm actually starting to master the art of diaper changing, and I've actually done pretty good. I was a babysitter long ago when I was preschool attendant. One of my first work study jobs in college eons ago was actually helping kids at a preschool in Cambridge, Mass. And so I never changed their diapers, but I was a babysitter for some of their kids, some of the kids of the parents there and who had younger toddlers and newborns. So I kind of brushed up on my skills for my own. So it's been good. I'd say I'd go on an average of one diaper change per day if I can. And otherwise, the wife is handling that. So she probably takes about two, if anything.
Well, that's this time in life, man, and it just gets crazier and crazier. And then my wife went back to work and left me with two kids at home that both needed their diapers changed. And I was like, what prepared me for this in journalism school? And I don't think there's anything that was, but man, there's nothing quite like being a dad. So enjoy it and get some cat naps while you can here.
Oh yeah, the cat naps. The first night home was rough.
Yeah.
The first night home was so rough. But yeah, last night and the night before, actually, we're starting to get a routine down. So we'll see how it goes in 3 months.
Well, I mean, there's really no easy way to shift gears to talking about Valley sports from that. And the number one story in Valley sports right now, and certainly as a father, it has given all of us pause. And that's, of course, the death of Jeff Gladney, who just signed with the Arizona Cardinals. And Dana, as we kind of dive into this and talk about Valley sports, just your own reaction to hearing the news and what you were able to kind of see from the Cardinals' reaction, how this impacted the team. Well,
it's segueing from a father's standpoint. It's just sad because we've had so many kids in Texas lost from the Uvalde tragedy last week, and then we had the with being having Gladney die in Texas from the car crash, with the young girl, and also condolences to the family of the young girl who lost her life in that crash too with Gladney. And from a Cardinals standpoint, it's really sad. They just started OTAs, the second week of OTAs coming up, and the mandatory mini camp coming up in June. It's just going to be a big void to fill because Gladney was projected to be the young star, possibly for competing for a starting role against Marco Wilson, who was a rookie last year, and starring possibly opposite with Byron Murphy Jr. So the Cardinals are definitely at a void that they thought was filled with Gladney at that cornerback spot. They needed one other, and he was supposed to be the guy coming from the Vikings, 2020 first-round draft pick, 31st pick overall. Had a great numbers from coming from TCU, was first team all Big 12. Just a young life lost and so much talent that is just hard to replace. That's all I can say from a Cardinals football standpoint. But from life, like Ime Udoka said the other night after winning Game 7 against the Heat about the Uvalde tragedy and the Celtics win, that losses and wins are not life or death. It's totally different in that way.
No, absolutely. I mean, preach with that. That's that. It certainly puts the games we play and the games that we cover into perspective here. And you think about how teams have honored the death of a teammate. What do you expect when we get into the doors at the Cardinals training facility on Wednesday for OTAs and kind of see take the temperature of the team after this devastating news?
Sad to say, life goes on, and that's how they're going to have to approach it. And obviously there's going to be some sort of feeling of post-mortem sentiment, and they're going to have to figure out how to fill that void that Gladney was supposed to fill. I think that Marco Wilson still has a job to do and prove that he is worthy of that starting role. He definitely proved himself last year, and this is supposed to be his time. Obviously, they are going to have to deal with some other draft picks that, working their way into that spot. So we'll see what happens come Wednesday. It's a long off season. Anything can happen. Anything can change. Anybody can lose spots. And it's still early to figure that out.
Yeah, and you think about, this devastating news, the news about DeAndre Hopkins getting suspended, the Kyler Murray contract issue. I don't know that we've ever had this much drama, this much just kind of negativity surrounding OTAs. How do you feel about the Cardinals right now as you start looking at next year's schedule?
Well, it looks like for the schedules, it's going to be hard to figure out how to handle this first 6 weeks. And it's something that Kingsbury is going to have more time to figure out. He didn't have that time to figure it out, and he admittedly said he did not do well adjusting on the fly when they lost Hopkins last year and halfway through the season. He was hurt most of the season. He got hurt before week 3 going into playing against the Jaguars and that win. And in Jacksonville, and then he had a shoulder injury, and then he had the knee injury against the Packers in that Thursday night game, and he just didn't recover well. So from there on, it's just that he's slowly gotten back. But then with this coming up, it makes for great fodder for the Hard Knocks, on HBO, the Hard Knocks series. Yeah, all that surrounding it is going to be great for the viewers to dissect and see what's going on behind the scenes with this team, especially trying to figure out what happens in the second half of the season. But with Hollywood Brown as their big pick and trying to adjust with his boy Kyler Murray, his best friend, that chemistry is going to work like the chemistry between Hop and Murray. So as proven over the past year, or past 2 years. We'll see what happens going forward, and I think the Cardinals definitely still have a shot to win the NFC West. It's just going to take the first 6 weeks to prove it. They have a hard schedule against, the Rams at first and the Chiefs in that game, season opener. They could go 2-1. That would be a success if they start off in those first 3 games 2-1.
Oh, man.
And maybe even 4-2. But 3-3 wouldn't be bad either.
So we were just looking at that because we're trying to figure out travel schedules, and we have the first 2 games. Shameless plug for Arizona's family, CBS 5, by the way. But yeah, the first game, you come out of the blocks of the Chiefs, then you go to the Raiders, then you're at home to the Rams, and then you go East Coast Panthers. Looks like it's a later start, and then you're home to the Eagles, and that's Eagles is the first game of October. So you think you get Hop back if he's DeAndre Hopkins that we have come to know. What do you need to be at with DeAndre Hopkins returning to the lineup to be able to make a run and put yourself back in the spot to get back to the playoffs?
Well, they're going to have to find a way to get the offense. I say the offense is going to figure out how to get balance between Ertz and also between Hollywood Brown and getting them situated. But if Trent McBride, if they get him as that other tight end in the offense, if he works his way into a starting spot and they go with a 2-man tight end start, then maybe they'll figure out how to balance the ball around and get him so that they get more pass protection, so Kyler doesn't have to work plays off his feet and doing his play actions. So it's going to take some time to really figure out how to get him protected with a younger O-line, and hopefully the young O-line stays healthy because they were really beat up last year early. And if Justin Murray comes back healthy, that was a big loss for them in their O-line. And then Pugh is, even though they basically extended him and he's aging, and if they have guys like Max Garcia and they get those other guys like Josh Jones, who had some trouble holding guys on the line last year, trying to figure out that right guard spot. So it's going to take the O-line really to get situated and stay healthy in order to get the offense going. And they don't get enough credit for that early part of last year in the first half where they cruised to an 8-0 run, and then they just got beat up and then just tanked from there.
No, offensive lines are everything, and they never stay healthy. And I'm actually one of the stories that I'm kind of really interested in is Will Hernandez and his impact that he has in it. The trip to Mexico City this year to take on the San Francisco 49ers, how cool that's going to be for him, and I think to grow the Cardinals brand as well. That's certainly one to look forward to. You got a Thursday night game against the Saints, and that Monday night game in Mexico City are the ones that I have circled, along with the 3 on CBS 5. But when it comes to the biggest story surrounding the Cardinals right now, the Kyler Murray contract, I'll give you 3 choices here. When do you expect to be writing about a Kyler Murray contract extension? Before this season, after this season, or never?
I think it's going to come in August. It usually comes around the time when it's right before the season starts. When you get a long-term contract, and Bidwell said this, the team owner, Michael Bidwell, mentioned that these things take time. He said that on 98.7 months ago, that it comes down to structuring it the way that they can and making sure that they have all the pieces fit in their salary cap, and then and basically figuring out where everybody is going to be set for themselves, and then saying, okay, we have these pieces fit, and now we got to take care of our guy long-term, who's our number 1 in Kyler Murray. We're not going to trade him. We're not going to do anything, but we're going to take care of him. We got his best friend to keep him happy. He wants to be here. So he's led us to a playoff game, albeit it wasn't the greatest performance, but it was his first playoff appearance in 6 years for the organization. So they're going to see the growth in him over time. When it came to the precedent of Josh Allen's $258 million, that was from August of 2021, because he got them that deal was basically based on him getting the Bills to 3 playoff games and also an AFC title game in 2020 in his second year. So that was basically what the benchmark of what Eric Burkhart was speaking to about, long-term security of the quarterback for the franchise going forward, and making sure that if he's going to get this much, and Kyler's proven as basically a Pro Bowler and an offensive rookie of the year selection and all the other accolades, that this guy has proven that he's worth the long-term deal. So it's going to take probably late summer to get this situated. And most of those long-term deals for those guys like Patrick Mahomes, when he got his big bucks, that was right before the season started a couple of years ago, and I believe in 2021. So that's going to take time to build and figure out where everybody comes in and finds they're happy with their pieces, their money. And then Kyler is going to find it basically be settled. And I know there's going to be a lot of speculation why he's not at OTAs and things like that. But, I don't think that's something to really sneeze at and figure that it's going to cause a distraction.
So you think he just hasn't shown up because he doesn't want to have to talk to the media about it, and he doesn't have to be there? And he's like, do you expect to see Hollywood Brown roll in here? Or do you think he and Kyler are just working out in the privacy of their own home state of Texas?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think Kyler and I know that Hollywood definitely want to be working out together in their hometown. And I know that Kyler likes being at home. He likes his Dallas area. And, all he's going to be asked about is, especially from that speculation that happened with the social media scrub that he did on his Instagram. And just that caused this huge brouhaha, and Eric Burkhart didn't help matters by tweeting and trolling the Cardinals, whenever there was a big deal that was struck by another team. That's like, see, this guy got it and this guy got it. So why doesn't the Cardinals do it for Kyler? That just takes too much distractions away from the task at hand to get back on their feet and prove that they are going to be a winning organization and continue the winning culture that Kingsbury and Keim has built together with Kyler. So Kyler just wants to basically be a football player. He doesn't want the business to get in the way of just being a football player. That's what he loves. That's what he said. And that's what he said. He's not for the nonsense. He said that when he reacted to the social media scrub that he did, and he just wants to basically be a football guy. He doesn't want to be a dollars and cents guy for right now. And that's all people are concerned about. So he's going to do what he can to avoid it and build the chemistry if it takes that of being away and be with his friend, Marquise Hollywood Brown in Texas, and, basically give the organization time to breathe and figure this out.
And I misspoke. Hollywood Brown from Hollywood, Florida, hence the nickname. But he is.
Oh yeah,
went to Oklahoma. Yeah, no, that's yeah. On me. I didn't have my roster in front of me. So I've never seen anything like this before in Valley Sports. We have 2 number 1 overall picks with contract disputes between their 2 teams as we switch gears to the Suns and DeAndre Ayton.
Oh yeah, right.
Man, does he get traded before Murray gets an extension? Do they end up having to pay him and run it back? What's your feel as we sort of – and by the way, I signed up for this to kind of watch games and tell everybody what happened. There was no clause in journalism school about having to read tweets and try to figure out which way the wind was blowing, but I guess we have to. Which way is the wind blowing with DeAndre Ayton?
Yeah, when in Rome, though. I mean, this is where it's at, right? And tweets and Twitter is basically the part of the fulcrum of journalism now and getting news out. So that Ayton is basically – I saw this. They're supposed to have a softball tournament in late June, and he's not on the bill with the other guys like Devin Booker, Cameron Payne, and he was basically – Cameron Payne was put as the replacement guaranteed to be there, and also Mikal Bridges and – there's some other guy, like Chris Paul. They're supposed to be at a softball tournament together as a team, and there's probably going to be some wonder, like, how come DeAndre Ayton isn't there or hasn't been confirmed to be there? But I think it's because there is some dust up between the organization and Ayton that they're not talking about and they don't want to talk about right now. They'll figure it out this summer when it comes to June 30th when the free agency begins, and the thing about Ayton is that he wants to get paid, and there's some teams out there like Detroit, Portland, San Antonio who have the cap space to give him a big offer, and the Suns are willing to match it. But then you got Booker, who's eligible for a supermax that he's first team All-NBA now. So he's eligible for a 5-year, $211 million extension. And so with Chris Paul, he's got 120 on his deal that was 4 years it kicked in last year. So you got all these guys on the books, and James Jones said that they're willing to pay the luxury tax and to be a better team. And that's what they got in this for, and to be a better team. And so they're going in the right direction. I think with Ayton, is going to wait out and see where they stand come out June 30th when he starts to figure out where his market value is elsewhere. And then as a part of it, he wants to stay here, I believe. And I can't speak for him, but I know that he is a Phoenix guy. He went to Hillcrest Prep. He helped the Suns go to the finals in last year, and they was projected to be at the finals. Obviously, it was a monumental collapse. My question is, why he didn't play more than 17 minutes. And Monty said it's internal. They're internally going to
good question, by the way. Thanks for getting that out there.
Yeah, I was actually surprised nobody asked it. When I saw that he got taken out at the 8:26 mark in the third quarter of Game 7 and only had 5 shot attempts, I just knew that seeing that box score from the first to third quarters that he only played 17 minutes and some change, I said, what's wrong here? This is our first overall pick and number 1 overall pick in franchise history, and he's not playing. He's their most efficient offensive player. He's shooting at 62.6% through the playoffs. Why isn't he out there? Why weren't they going to him early? And I think it's because they all played bad. There was no excuse. That Luka's greatness just basically overwhelmed them. Luka was posting Ayton up and taking, great shots in the paint over him and hitting threes. And those first 3 shots, 2 from 3 and another shot over Ayton, I said, oh, it's going to be a long night. But I think Ayton just wants the dust to settle and then figure this out. And he wants to stay in Phoenix. That's my prediction. They will figure it out how to keep him here because he's a top 5 center in the NBA. And there's no question about his progress over the past year. You can't pin it on him as to why the Suns lost. Everybody played bad. Devin Booker played bad. Chris Paul played bad. Mikal Bridges played bad. And, Jay Crowder played bad in Game 7. It just was a monumental collapse. No way you can spin it. It doesn't fall on just Ayton. And taking him out, Monty said, he just knew that Devin and Chris weren't playing well. And obviously it was a disciplinary move for what he said about, to Monty on coming out of that game. Well, and then they'll discuss it at some point on how to come on a common accord. But like DA said, also in the practice beforehand, I asked him was like playing for Igor versus playing for Monty, and he's like, obviously the chemistry was going to grow over time with Igor, but it didn't. He was out after 1 year for their second worst season ever, winning 19 games, and then Monty came in and they butt heads, and Monty calls him out when he's not mature enough, but he's matured over time, going from a 19-year-old one and done to a 22-year-old guy and a father, to circle back to fatherhood.
That'll do it. Yeah.
So I think that, and Monty understands where he's at and wants to be secure, and they didn't get the negotiations done as expected to manifest and having his peers, having a match up to his peers like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and also Doncic and Trae Young, and even Michael Porter Jr. So they're not proven to get to the finals like Ayton has, but they will look to help take care of their big man because that's where the league's at. It's gone back to the big man. You see that with Giannis Antetokounmpo. You see that with Jokic and Embiid as the top 2 vote getters for MVP. And in the West, you got to have a big to contend against these great teams that have bigs. All-star bigs.
Yeah, I just wonder why Monty left it open there, where he didn't, where he even brought it up. I mean, he told you it was internal, and in the end of the year news conference via Zoom back at the practice facility the day after the loss in Game 7, he wouldn't kind of smooth everything over. There was still a lot of frustration there. So I wonder if it can be patched up, or are we talking about, instead of running it back, trying to take this thing to the next level if they don't think DA can get them there?
Yeah, it's like a dust-up you have with any family member. And the aftermath is like, do you have answers? Do you talk right away? Or do you just calm it down and just try to talk it out when you're both ready to talk it out? I mean, I think that's where it's at right now. And the Suns consider themselves a family. And they consider themselves brothers. And brothers fight. They squabble. And when brothers are ready to talk, when all's calm, then that's the best way to settle things instead of making emotional decisions. And I think that's where the Suns were at and why Monty didn't speak on it. And, when you go to war with your brother and things don't go right, and you figure out what went wrong, it's best to do it when the emotions are on a low, not on a high.
No, I know. I just, I'm all for people screaming at each other and figuring it out. I don't want to have to sit here and figure this thing out all summer and wait for everybody to, come back together at media day and say, no, it's fine, we're going to run it back. But you think the Suns should run it back? Like with,
I believe so. Yeah.
Really, even with Chris Paul showing his age, it's like he hit an expiration date at 37. What's it look like with Chris Paul next year in the playoffs?
It's going to take another guy as a backup. I think Chris Paul is going to have his mismatch better. I know Monty said that he was probably riding him too much in that series against the Pelicans. But I think that the Suns got really beat up physically from that Pelicans series because going up against those bigs, and they were out rebounded heavily against guys like Valanciunas in the middle and Jackson Hayes and Larry Nance. And Devin Booker said after Game 1 against the Mavericks in that blowout victory that this series is different. They're not going up against those bigs the Pelicans have, just like the Mavericks. That was a totally different series, and the Mavericks had smaller guys and more quicker guys who just let threes fly, and they were just rain threes, and just hard to, close out on those guys after a while. If you've ever played a pickup basketball game and you got one guy who is just so good and uses his size and athleticism, who could just get inside on anybody in the middle and then kick out to guys as you're hedging to collapse and help out on those guys and shifting the defense to help protect the paint. And then you got to run back out to those guys on the corners, and whether it's the corner or the short corner or even the slot, just to prevent the threes, and guys are great shooters like Bullock and Dorian Finney-Smith and, Kleba and guys of that nature. It's hard to keep your energy up, especially after you've been beat down and going to 6 games against the Pelicans. And, those, and also the Mavericks games, the games were one after another every other day. And with Chris Paul, with a guy that he's obviously aged, and with game 4, game 3 he wasn't the same, and I think he was injured. They did not acknowledge his hand injury. I believe that he definitely felt that, and he was trying to play through it and tough it out, because Monty had to go to war with him, and after Chris Paul went perfect, 14 for 14, and a phenomenal performance in game 6.
We all forget about that.
Yeah, he had to be perfect, in order to, for the Suns to beat the Pelicans, and then to have to be perfect again, basically, like he was in game 1 and 2 against the Mavericks, and can extend that for another, 4 games. It's hard. It's not the easiest thing to do.
All right. Is the championship window, is it closing for the Suns?
It is. I believe so. Yeah. With this iteration of the team, it is. I believe they have another 2 years to figure this out with Chris, and I think they need another creator off the dribble. If they're going to make a trade, they're going to have to do it from the bottom up, not from the top down. And when you go through a shakeup like this, and you have a great starting 5 like the Suns have, that get to them to their best mark, you go from the top down. When you went through the 7 seconds or less era, and they kept losing, they broke up the whole entire team after it was 2010. It basically was, and when Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, when they had their game plan set, and he still, went for 32, or I believe it was 36.
Oh, game 6, yeah. Well, if Jason Richardson boxes out Ron Artest, the Suns come back here and can wrap it up. And I was actually set to go to Boston for Diamondbacks, Red Sox, and we were thinking we were going to have a rematch of the '76 NBA Finals between the Suns, and then Kobe starts launching threes from the parking lot in game 6 here, and that was that. I thought, you know what, we should be in Boston right now talking about the Suns and the Celtics again.
I wanted a Suns-Celtics finals. I wanted a reason to go see my friends out in Boston. I just spent 17 years of my adulthood in that town, which is most of my life, as an adult. So I wanted that Suns-Celtics series, and also for Al McCoy, for his sake, as a 50-year caller of the Suns games. So I wanted that for him, basically, so we could relive the 76 Gar Heard, shot heard around the world here in the Valley kind of thing. So I think with the Suns, the window is 2 years and getting this iteration of the team, because it's been 3 so far since the bubble, and then you got another 2 years, so that makes 5. And the 7 seconds or less with D'Antoni, that was basically 4 of his years. And then you had Terry Porter, and then Alvin Gentry replaced him after that. And they had the great run in 2008, 2009, and then 2009, 2010, which was basically 6 years with that team that was basically Stoudemire, Sean Marion, Steve Nash, Jason Richardson. When he came
Lightning Lou Amundsen.
Boris Diaw as their
Leandro
Barbosa,
Pat Burke.
Yeah, Pat Burke. Right. And, got Jake Voskuhl.
He was early.
Hey, shout out to Jake Voskuhl. He's a UConn guy. I'm a born and raised Connecticut native. So
you're a Choud, right? Are you a born and bred Choud?
Oh, what? I didn't even heard that term. What
Oh,
is that?
okay. Yeah, just from New England. You know, is New England home for you? Is that, are
Oh
those
yeah,
your,
chowder, like some chowder.
yeah.
Oh, New England clam chowder. Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
So I consider myself more of a tri-stater
yeah.
than a New Englander. But yeah, I mean, I give shout out to Boston as a New Englander because of the fact that I became a man there in that city, and so that place has a special place in my heart forever. And I have a lot of friends still there, and I talk to them all the time. But I grew up a lot of my life early on my formative years between New York City and Connecticut. So, but my heart is in Connecticut. I was born in Norwich, raised in Norwich, and I played all my basketball glory days in high school in Connecticut. So shout out to CT, the Nutmeggers, all around the world.
Where can we find YouTube video of you balling?
I don't have any, man. I'll tell you, I got old clippings that I can show you. Maybe I'll post them up on Twitter one day, or Instagram on my page. But I wish I had old clips. I'm pre-YouTube. I'm from the Stone Age in the '90s when we didn't have YouTube. All we had was newspaper clippings, and you were lucky to get a clipping. That's why when I covered high school sports for 3 years, I took pride in adding my name to some kids' legacy in sports, because they're going to tell their kids and their grandkids about it one day, and I'm be proud to document their legacy and their family in sports here in the Valley.
So how did you get involved in sports journalism? And did you ever think that you would be covering sports in Phoenix, Arizona?
No, actually, I did. My wife actually got us out here when she got a job with marketing partnerships with the Suns back in January 2018. She was there for most of that year, and then I used that as a means to segue through a friend of mine and hers at the Suns, who was working there at the time. Shout out to Joey Artigue. He used to be with the Suns as well.
Yep.
Yeah, and he introduced me to Greg Moore, who's a columnist over there at the Arizona Republic for the past 5 years.
We got to get him on here with you. We could probably talk for like 3 days straight.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Greg, great friend, he got me involved, and speaking with Mark Fowler, who is still my boss over at the AZ Central, Arizona Republic, and I've been there ever since. And they had me start over with high school, and before then I was working at Complex Sports, but I was a rap journalist for about 7 years before.
Really?
I covered rap music for Hip Hop DX and AmbrosiaForHeads.com. And Hip Hop DX is one of the top and premier hip hop news websites on the internet. Still one of the most successful, and they've been since 1999. And I got in 2013, but I started in the blog era for rap journalism in 2008, and so that was actually my start, when rap blogs were the thing in the late 2000s. And I just wanted to be a part of something. Instead of being a fan, I said, I got to start documenting this, because this is a great time to start writing. And I just got tired of working in finance, crunching numbers. So I worked from being a rap journalist to being a sports journalist for Complex Sports based in New York. And then, 4 years later, 3 years later in 2018, I got the job with AZ Central, and I've been working my way up into being a Suns beat writer and Cardinals beat writer since last year.
So best MC of all time, top 5.
Oh, I love this question. I'm an 80s guy, so I would say Rakim for number 1.
Oh,
KRS-One for number 2. Number 3, I'd say Redman. Number 4, this is an unpopular pick, but I grew up on a lot of Gang Starr, so I love Guru's voice because I have a deep baritone, monotone voice. And number 5, I like Del the Funky Homo Sapien. I grew up on a lot of his, the hieroglyphics and his freestyle ability. So I'm a Del the Funky Homo Sapien proponent. I've interviewed him a bunch of times, and the hieroglyphics, those guys are definitely good friends. They're so cool. And, I love those guys. But shout out to De La Soul, too, because I love those guys. And, great to hang out with, whenever I get to see those guys.
Did you ever try your hand at rapping? Or
absolutely.
Yeah, is that on YouTube?
No, but I had a radio show actually as a means to get into journalism back when I was getting my master's at Northeastern. I actually was having a radio show at MIT, which is actually the second radio station in the country to have a rap radio show back in 1980, and it was right after, I believe, WHBI in New York, an AM radio station for all you old school listeners out there. And shout out to the Awesome Two, and rest in peace to Special K's son, who I just got word who passed. Teddy Ted and Special K, the Awesome Two, who were the pioneers of rap radio, actually, along with Mr. Magic at WBLS 107.5 in New York. And rest in peace to him too. So yeah, I actually had a rap radio show for 7 years, from 2009 to 2016. I interviewed a lot of rap legends, and I made a lot of friends with them. And I was also a rap radio host in Connecticut too, at age 14 and in college. So,
wow. And then, you got a finance degree. And then
I got a marketing degree, but I got into finance because those were the easiest jobs to get in 2004 because the market was so bad for the jobs. So I took whatever I could get to stay out of my hometown in Norwich.
Are you like a numbers guy too? Are you?
No, I'm all for words. I became a numbers guy by default, but I'm all for words, man. I love words, more than numbers.
Well,
words are power, man. Words start wars and they bring peace.
Well, yeah, well said right there. Real quick, but the number that, look, show everybody your jersey right now. You're kind of a numbers guy, right?
Big Game James was a Carolina guy, and the Carolina has so many great names. That is what Monty Williams calls basketball nirvana. If you've ever been on that campus, is in Chapel Hill for their basketball facility. They have Jordan, they have Phil Ford, Billy Cunningham, Vince Carter, Anton Jameson. They got, it's Jerry Stackhouse, Rasheed Wallace. And I remember seeing those guys go to war against Tim Duncan and Randolph Childress, Wake Forest, and those Tobacco Road battles against Duke in the 90s. And, Donald Williams, I'll throw Donald Williams in because he gets a lot of credit for winning the 93 title. I have on tape.
Dante Calabria and Montross.
I love Dante Calabria. I love that guy, man. That guy was one of the best three-point shooters in college basketball history. He shot like 44%, and he had the weirdest form.
Yeah, I don't think he wore socks.
He wore ankle socks, like the tiniest ankle socks with low cuts. That guy started the low cut trend. He doesn't get enough credit for starting the low cut, trend for basketball shoes.
Yes. Who else on the team? It's was Brendan Haywood?
Brendan Haywood.
Yeah.
Haywood. Yeah. And Serge Zwicker and guys like that. Gosh. I'm throwing out names like Charlie Scott, who was the first. The first black recruit that Dean Smith ever had, and he was a Phoenix Sun. He's a Hall of Famer too.
Oh wow, there's a story right there. That's so. When was he on the Suns? Do you know his whole story?
This was in the early '70s when the Suns first started. Yeah, I can't name the exact years, but he was basically their Suns, one of their top draft picks back in the early '70s before they got Spencer Haywood, I believe. No, I'm sorry. Before they got Connie Hawkins.
Yes, the Hawk.
Yeah,
oh man, there's some great video of the Hawk. I would love to see how Connie Hawkins fit into the NBA today. Real quick, but while we're talking Tar Heels,
Rick Fox too.
Oh, Rick Fox. Yes. That was like Final Four
91.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Hubert Davis. He played with Hubert Davis in that 91 Final Four, as well as. You got Eric Montross, was another great. He actually does play-by-play, for the Tar Heels now.
Does he really?
He does, Eric Montross, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Raymond Felton, I was here the night of his first triple-double.
Wow, Raymond Felton, that guy.
Yeah, he's a little later, the 2000 Tar Heels. It's, and I know you and Nick King, our resident Tar Heel here in the Arizona's Family Sports Office, play some pickup. One-on-one right now, you versus Nick King. Who wins and why?
I would say Nick because I'm a little rusty. I never like to, give up on my moves. But Nick is a great three-point shooter, actually. He actually is a very fluid shooter. I just got to get a couple more shots up, and I got to get my handle down because when you stop playing, the handle's the first thing to go. You got to get your handles down. And I think Nick is a guy who leads the break, but I'll give it up to Nick for the fact that he can shoot from outside and I'd have to close out. But when it comes to the athleticism, getting in and going in with the left and the right, it would be me. But for right now, at this moment, it's Nick. But when it comes to about 2 to 3 more weeks of me getting some training in and, getting my hops back, from, the gym and such, because I like going to the gym like 4 times a week. But it's different from being in weightlifting shape than it is in basketball shape. And I think Nick is in better basketball shape than me right now.
Well, here's the bad news. I'm sorry to break the bad news to you here. Since you're a dad, your golf game and your basketball game, it's pretty much over for a while. I mean, you can try to spin it like a health for my family, honey. I need to leave.
Yeah.
Golf though, it's like I can't leave for 6 hours and come back smelling like beer. And it's just how it goes, and it's great. It's the most glorious thing ever. But we'll just go ahead. Concede to Nick.
I'm just saying that I definitely got to get more practice on my drives at Papago because I know my drive is not where it needs to be when it comes to the golf game, and I know that you would probably have a better shot than me on getting on those back nines. So,
all right. Well, you, me, Greg Moore, and Nick King, we'll go play a foursome, and Nick will just I don't know how Greg Moore is, but he has like 9 kids, right? So he's probably his golf game is probably terrible too.
Yeah, no, Greg is like the ODB of Arizona sports journalism, right? So, no, shout out to ODB, rest in peace. But now he's got 4 to be exact, and I think with when it comes to balling, actually, Greg's a good outside shooter. I actually played pickup with him a couple of years ago.
All right, maybe we'll do 2-on-2, and I'm like Arvydas Sabonis.
Yeah, I played pickup with Greg. Arvydas that guy was a great creator, man.
I'll just pass to the spot where no one's at, and it'll find someone's hands. That's about all I'm good for anymore.
Yeah,
so, and I was never that. Yeah, I was never. I was a blocking wide receiver, man. That tells you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I know, like, just like Hop said, just like DeAndre Hopkins told me last year, in the scrum, that wideouts, take pride in their blocking.
Yeah, I took a lot of pride in it. Even though, I mean, if they would have kept stats, I wouldn't want to see him. But yeah, man, it's all about getting out there and playing. So, hey, thanks so much for joining us today. We appreciate your time. And tell us real quick, where can we find your stuff, and what are you working on right now for AZ Central?
Well, I just had my series published about the Suns' most influential coaches. That was a series 4-part published on azcentral.com /sports. And it was about Monty Williams and where he stands for the Suns' 6 most successful coaches in their 54-year franchise history. And that's under the Monty Williams, Cotton Fitzsimmons, Alvin Gentry, John McLeod, who was the longest tenured Sun coach ever. He had 13 seasons with the team. Paul Westphal, rest in peace. And then Mike D'Antoni as well. So that's on that was published yesterday in the Arizona Republic. And the 2 parts that were published was Paul Westphal and Mike D'Antoni, and Jerry Colangelo was one of my sources, the main source actually, to speak on that. And also before then, the Monty Williams piece and the Cotton Fitzsimmons and John McLeod installment. That was actually the day before Memorial Day, Sunday. And you can find those 4 different pieces on AZ Central. Speaking of Arvydas Sabonis, he's the reason why in 1988 that the USA lost in the Olympics, because they lost to the Russians. Of course, that was the tail end of the Cold War. So Jerry Colangelo was basically inspired as the head of USA Basketball to band the best of the best together to form the dream team because of Arvydas Sabonis and what he did as the 2nd most feared player in the world behind Michael Jordan at the time. And that's where we have the dream team in 92, which is celebrating its 30th anniversary this June.
Arvydas Sabonis, the gift that keeps on giving. So you're about my age, so you're gonna be able to play along with this from Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann on SportsCenter. He's not your Vetus.
He's not. What'd he say?
He's not my Vetus. He's our Vetus.
Nice.
Oh, man. Well, hey, thanks for jumping in the Extra Point. We appreciate the time, and we'll see you out at a sporting event soon.
Hey, thank you for having me, Mark. Appreciate you.
The Extra Point Podcast is a production of 3TV, CBS 5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.